What's up, world, and welcome to another Super Investor Show. My name's John Harry. I'm going to be your host, but I'm not important because, as you know, our Super Investor guest is the star attraction. And this time, arguably, we have the greatest secret in the Hedera community. Now, Haya from Outlier Ventures, she is a woman that all of you should know. If you have an idea, you don't have the funding, you might not have the tech know-how, and most importantly, you might not have the experience needed. Well, this woman right here is someone who may be able to help you. But beyond that, she's also a super investor. So let's find out what she invests in, why she's an investor, and most importantly, what's her superpower and weakness. Because ultimately, it's the weakness that is more interesting. So welcome up on stage, Haya from Outlier Ventures.
Hello. Hi, Jordan.
Hey. First and foremost, I didn't even ask you offline. Where are you calling in from in the world?
I'm calling in from London.
Oh, are you in my city? Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. I
Yep,
love
I'm
that.
based in London.
Super. Now, I, of course, have got the chance to get to know you offline, but for the audience at home, how would you define Haya?
So I think there are like two things that define me. I'm always in search for novelty and in search for connection. And I think because I'm always in search of these two things, the like entrepreneurship and the entrepreneurial ecosystem kind of have been like a natural fit. Because I think entrepreneurship is all about heart and connection and also novelty and innovation. And right now so I've always worked around startups, sometimes in startups, sometimes with startups from a like consumer perspective. And now with Outlier Ventures, it's a little bit of everything where you're an investor and you're a partner as well. And you're almost like an extended team member. So yeah, and Outlier Ventures, for those that don't know, is an accelerator that invests in Web3 startups. And I'm managing their Hedera-focused Base Camp. So that's companies that
Woo.
either I know that you're a Hedera fan. um, so yeah, we're either we invest in companies that are already building on Hedera, or companies that haven't necessarily thought of Hedera, but where we identify that they could be a good fit. I do have to give a quick disclaimer: opinions are my own and not Outlier Ventures opinions.
Perfect. I think you're the first and only guest that will have that disclaimer. I love the professionalism because we lack that sometimes on this
Yeah.
show. So
Cross your T's, dot your I's.
I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did because it might get me in trouble. So now that you said it, I'll never have to say it again. Now, because we have a very limited time with you and there's so much that we want to know, one thing that I haven't done with previous guests, and I was saying again with you offline as you came in the studio, which was I don't ask people what they invest in. And so if you don't mind sharing, you don't have to say what coin, because I know people can get attacked because of the tribalism out there. But what do you invest in?
I'll kind of give it like from an OV perspective and personal perspective, but I think I'm the type of person who invests in like long-term opportunities. It's always where I think it's resonated the most with me, like just investing early in something that's building. So not necessarily like investing in a token or a coin that's going up or going down, and being super smart about quick trades and when to make them. So I think so I invest in kind of companies with a vision that it might take time for it to be fully materialized. And I think part of the reason why I love working at Outlier Ventures is it also holds that same sort of vision. It's like we invest in projects and we're there to be like their partner, not just like a quick turnaround, but like their partner from like as they grow. So in terms of like the types of companies I like to invest in, um, personally, I like to invest in companies that I know have like some sort of echo effect. So not something that stands on its own. So for
I've never
example,
heard
like
that before. Tell me more about echo effect.
I don't know, like for example, like even though I think some gaming companies are really cool, I'm really excited about the infrastructure that could, empower tens or hundreds of gaming companies, or or even something that might have an impact in terms of like humanity as a whole. like rethinking healthcare, for example. I have a little bit of a background in healthcare. Like, that's like just one thing where you find like one small fix that then many other things can be built on top of that, and that excites me.
You and I both.
Yeah.
You and I both. And I'm a big
So,
believer in investing in those layer ones, just like yourself. Do you care to mention other layer ones, or is it just strictly Hedera, HBAR that had your attention?
um, it's not necessarily, by the way, layer ones. I like some good layer twos, like,
Ah,
because I do think they're kind of transformative in making layer ones more useful and more accessible, and I think that's a big part of where the gap in Web3 lies, is that it's like it's clunky, it's in its early days, and it could be amazing, and the potential for it can be amazing, but if no one knows how to use it or wants to use it, then that's going to be like a major blocker. um but yeah, I don't know, I'm not like, in general, I think I'm not a like a maxi. I look at each individual opportunity, and then I try to assess whether whatever protocol they chose is the right fit for it, because I do think different protocols serve different purposes.
of course.
um, and and like, if you're trying to build a certain type of company and you're choosing the wrong kind of tech, then that's more of an issue for me than whatever like a protocol you choose to build on.
You're not wrong. A great point to make, because so often, especially as
Mhm.
entrepreneurs and builders, we sit in our room, we think we've got this great product, this great blockchain, but it's useless if no one wants to build on it. So I'm glad that you're bridging the gap between the two.
Yeah, I mean, personally, it's something that I'm passionate about. And at Outlier Ventures, I think, though, we invest in like really everything, and we have a bunch of different programs that kind of cover either different protocols like Hedera or Polkadot or Polygon, for example. But we are also now building like thematic programs based on gaps that we see, or opportunities rather that we see. So, for example, we have a collaboration with Farfetch, just because digital fashion is majorly growing and there's a lot of interest there. So we saw a lot of room to support founders in that area. So it's a like fashion themed accelerator, or similarly a DeFi themed one. So
Wow.
yeah.
We're going to have you come back on to break that all down. I don't think we've got enough
Yeah.
time, but I love. But if you don't mind, we're going to jump into our questions for the show, which we always start with a superpower. So, what is your superpower as a super investor here?
So I thought about this. So I think my superpower is that I see opportunities for what they could be and not what they are today. And I think it's been really helpful having that ability, especially when you're doing like very early stage investments. I think it's very easy when you look at an opportunity to see all that is wrong with it. And sometimes it even makes you feel a little smart to spot a mistake, or to be like, oh, like I caught them out on this or I caught them out on that. And I think like sometimes there's a tendency for people to do that. But I think my superpower is being like, okay, cool. Like I see all of this, but I also see that if we fix that and if we change this is what it could become. And I think that's something that has served me well in the past. And I think, especially like when we're working at Outlier Ventures, and you're a partner, I think there's an added element not only of what it could become, but what could we help you become. So we're
Mm,
not only taking a bet on the project we're investing in, but we're also taking a bet on what we can provide to them.
yeah.
And I think there's that element. So yeah, I would say it's like kind of seeing the lump of coal for a diamond before it's clear. Yeah, that's kind of,
And
I'd
normally
say.
that is the secret sauce to investing, right? Because you want to be in when it's not sexy, when it's not on the news, as we all know. And I had a great quote, which was, "It's your vision, so therefore you can't expect anyone else to see it."
Yeah.
Because often at times we get pushed back from loved ones at times because they kind of think we're crazy. In your experience here, how have you overcome people on the outside looking in and they can't see your vision?
That's an interesting question. I think actually there are two things I kind of like. One is not a direct answer, but I think it's worth mentioning is that I think it's also really important to take time as an investor to understand the founder's vision, because very often it is hard to see their vision. And I think a big part of it is just like really listening and asking questions to really try to see what they're seeing and why they're seeing it. But I think I don't know if I'm like in terms of what do I do when people don't see the vision. I think it's knowing who to listen to and not making space for everyone's voice and everyone's, yeah, it's kind of trying to like, you know, trying to like listen to the right people. And so let's say like, you know, if I were talking to someone super technical and they were like dissing a commercial model, maybe I'm not going to take that like particular diss, you know. But if a very commercial person is dissing the commercial and saying, hey, I
Mm,
like, I don't see it at all, well then I should pause. And I think, yeah. So it's kind of knowing who to listen to and knowing who to shut out, which isn't always easy. Like I'm sitting here talking as if it's this easy thing, but I think it's something that I'm still learning how to do,
of course.
and like trying to like find that confidence, and trying like to honestly ask myself the question of like, what do I need to feel confident in this vision? And sometimes it's maybe asking the right people, doing the right research. Like, what do I need beyond my gut feeling to feel confident with my decision? And then once I feel that, I can stand up to like people asking questions or doubts. Or,
I think
yeah.
that's beautiful how you unpacked what belief is in a project, right? Because we know motivation, it will peak and trough. You weren't complaining to me earlier, but you were sharing how overwhelmed you've been with work, and that motivation can peak and trough, especially because of the overload. And it's that belief in what you're doing. And you mentioned one of the things, the founder's vision. What other things have you found helps with that vision?
Helps them find their vision, you think, or helps?
Okay, so the better way, you mentioned how in your gut you believe in what is being built. That, like you said, that lump of coal could one day become precious metal. You
Mhm.
mentioned one thing you look for is the founder's vision. What other things do you look for that gives you that belief?
I think like the founder's vision, but just also like the founder and the founding teams, like their capabilities. So, um, like, you know, some things can, like trying to sort through what can be learned and what can't be learned. So then doubling down on the things that can't be learned, do they have them or do they not? So a lot
Mm,
of that is like attitude, I think. Sometimes it's also things like, you know, a network. Like we were talking about like fashion, for example. You can be like the best designer in the world, but the fashion industry is such a like small industry that's hard to break into, that like if you don't have necessarily maybe the right connections or at least a path to get to there, it's going to be super hard to crack in. So it's
yeah,
like trying to figure out like this problem that they're solving, are they the ones that are going to be able to
to
solve
be the
it?
ones that do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And going back from there. And then I think like some of it is, and these are skills that I don't necessarily have, and that's where I kind of rely on other people, is like, what are the technical limits? Like, is what they can build, like, is it buildable or not? And you know, I kind of chuckled when I saw that you said like the power of vision, as the title of this. And I think it's like visionaries, and vision is always really like prided, like, or like acclaimed, like in the startup world, like, oh, this person is
Mm,
a visionary. But every true visionary needs like a cautionary, and you can't have one without the other. Like you need someone who's a bit more pessimistic, who's checking
yeah.
things, like checking the tech, like legal. No one loves legal, and like sometimes I'm so excited about something, and then they come and they're like, you know what, Haya, like this would be would be considered a security, and then it will fall into that regulation. And I'm a bit bummed. I'm like, oh, but this project could be so great. But at the end of the day, it's so important to get those people giving that feedback. And I think especially like in the Web3 world, we need to like amplify those
Mhm.
cautionaries as well as the visionaries, because that's what can stop things like maybe like the Terra Luna crash, for example. Like if you had an allowed space for more skepticism and then address those skepticisms, then you're also creating a more resilient project that can be true to your long-term vision.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I think yeah.
And that trade-off is speed, right? Because if you decide to be, as you put it, pessimistic, or what if that happens? What if this happens? It is a fine balance between launching and capturing a large piece of the market, and also holding back, refining things so that when you do launch, that it is 100% uptime. And if you're part, do you know much about the XRP community and
Not
XLS20?
much.
Okay, no problem. I'll keep it really short and simple. So right now there is a vote that everyone who runs a node on the XRP ledger gets to vote whether this XLS20, which will allow NFTs to be minted and NFT marketplaces to come online. This vote has been going on, and our producer knows better than I do, but it's been going on nearly a year now. I can see him in the background. Nearly a year. Will I be close? Yeah, he's giving me the thumbs up. Excellent. So recently, only recently, has it passed the threshold for it to go live, which is 80%. But it has to stay above 80% for 2 weeks. And again, I'm looking at my producer. He'll tell me if I'm saying anything out of line. However, with I think we're about a week in, everyone was getting really excited. All these NFT projects were getting ready. And then literally the other night, one of the node operators noticed something which, if it was approved, it could be abused. And so instantly things got delayed. And to the frustration of many in the community, but because they understand there's a fine balance between speed and also things breaking. And I want us to move on to, of course, your weakness in just a second. But hey, is there anything that you want to say off the back of that?
Yeah, and I'd say like sometimes making mistakes or having those blind spots or is more affordable, and sometimes it isn't. And then part of it is kind of knowing that balance,
Mm,
like for example, I mentioned that I have a little bit of a background in healthcare. Like you need to be 10 times more 100 times more cautious when you're building like a healthcare product, because you're affecting people's lives. So then time is like an absolute necessity. But then when you're building something else, I'm, you can be maybe more experimental and take bigger risks. And I think it's knowing where that right fit is. Yeah. So that's kind of just the comment I wanted to make on that.
thank you. Thank you. And between us, I don't think we'll find an answer. And I don't think there is a black
No.
and white answer. But what I think that is needed is a process. And as my producer just said, the XRP ledger was one day away from having that special piece of code being approved and NFTs flying on the XRP ledger. So you can only imagine a day before. But the beautiful thing is they have a process in place. Let's see them get it right. So with that being said,
Yeah.
here we now transition to my favorite part of the show, which is your vulnerability. So what is your weakness as a super investor?
So I kind of touched on that like a little bit above, but I think my weakness is sometimes I see something and I really want it to be what I want it to see. And I almost impose my own vision or my own desires onto that. So I kind of said my strength is, I see something for what they could be and not for what they are. But my weakness is sometimes I see things for what I want them to be rather
Yeah.
than what they actually could be.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's a little bit maybe of like over optimism, or maybe it's a little bit of this like strength of conviction. That with time I've been really learning to kind of learning how to kind of manage and know when to push and when to back off.
Mm,
And a big way I do that is by having like, for example, I have a few colleagues at Outlier Ventures who are like way more skeptical than I am. And I keep making fun of them about being skeptical, but actually I love it because I think they really keep me in check. And I always run things through them because I know that they're gonna give me their like very honest opinions and very critical opinions. And then the fun part actually is after they give that, me trying to think, okay, can I address this? Can we work with this? What can we do? And then if the answer is still yes, then that's even more amazing. But then that also means that sometimes the answer is going to be no, and you're just going to have to take a hit and be like, okay, I guess, the pessimist, or rather the cautionaries, win this one.
And I can't remember where I read it here, but they said that people who are more pessimistic live longer for the simple
Yeah.
reason that they don't take as much risk. And I think between you and I, who already I can already tell, who are the optimists, realistic optimists, it's in a question of, okay, but how fulfilled was your life? Because you can live, and there's a great, I'm very philosophical, but there's a great philosophical quote, which is, if you measure your life in years, that's not what is living. You can live 20 years, and that can be a long life full of memories and beautiful experiences, or you could live 80 years and you potentially didn't do much living at all. And, oh, please.
Yeah, no, and like similar to that, there's like this quote, like, I'd rather be merry than right. Like sometimes taking a chance and enjoying taking that chance, even if it screws you over later, is more rewarding than being so pessimistic and seeing the worst. Especially, I think, because I mentioned like I'm the type of person who connections drive me, and I
Mm,
think with connecting with people, if you have, for example, your guards up, and in some ways connecting with people is a type of investment, right? Like you're investing your emotion and your time in
fine.
in people. And sometimes if you have like your guards up and you're seeing the worst in anyone, you might stop yourself from being screwed over by someone, but you're also like stopping yourself from some unexpected magic moments. And I like to be open to those, both when I'm investing in companies and when I'm investing in people.
Okay, I'm so gutted we've started talking about it here because we've got about 7 minutes and we're gonna have to talk a lot more offline here because if you know me, I love my philosophy and the concept of when it comes to, like you said, living a merry life and being right is, as much as it's objective, it's also a matter of time, in my opinion, right? Because right now, um, I'm invested in HBAR. I don't know if you are, but I'm happy to, of course, put that disclaimer out there. I don't know if I'm right. Right now, on paper, I'm wrong. Okay, well, what metric are we measuring that on? And so, what I love about the people you surround yourself with, and it sounds like you've got a good tribe, is it's that reminder that there's no guarantees. Right, other than death and taxes. I put a tweet out recently and I said the only guarantee is death. And someone said, but what about taxes? I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to delete that tweet now and add taxes. But the main thing I took away from that was in this moment in time, I guess I'm not right. The price of HBAR hasn't appreciated, so I guess right now I'm wrong. But then at the same time, I have to lower my expectations, extend my time horizon, and say to myself, what if I am wrong? Like, let's play that simulation. Somehow, some way, my gut feeling, the people around me, they're wrong. And so am I. And so, how do you know when to be a pessimist and when to be that optimist who has that vision and ignores the naysayers? And it's not an easy answer, I
um,
know. But I want to know how you
no,
battle with that.
I think like I don't know if like you're familiar with like I guess there's like the sunk cost fallacy, right? Like sometimes you've already invested, and then and I think actually a lot of people in the Web3 world kind of invest and then they hear something and they don't hold true to their vision, and then they pull that money out and they put it somewhere else,
Yeah.
where when they already made a loss there, so the loss that they made is they already took it, and then they take it and then they put it somewhere else, and then eh, and skittish money never makes more money. Like
Ooh, say that
um
again. Say that one more time.
I just say skittish money never makes more money.
This money.
Um, I think to be honest, part of the reason how I deal with it is like personally, I never invest more than I know I can handle. So in my head, I'm like, if it's a loss, I can live with that loss. It's a learning
Mhm,
opportunity. I
mhm,
participated in something I believed in. I probably learned a little to make better investors later, or maybe even got out different things. Like maybe, for you with Hedera is like connecting with the HBAR community and being part of that can, even if everything continues like I mean, obviously we both see potential in the ecosystem, but let's pretend we don't. Even if
mhm.
everything goes bust, you're still connecting with super smart people, and you're still learning from investing in and putting a part of you in it, which you wouldn't learn if you were just watching from afar and observing. It's not the same. So I think that's kind of how I deal with it, is like there's learning to be had, and when you have some skin in the game, that's not when you don't. And then also, like, I make sure that I don't put myself in a position where, like, if it goes bust, I will fundamentally, be affected.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting here? You are our fifth or sixth guest on the show, and it's the same but different in terms of how you delivered it. And for many people, people are looking for that special aha, wow, I've never heard of that. But it is doing the common things uncommonly well. And I'm starting to create a little journal, especially speaking to smart people like yourself. And one of the key takeaways, and again, you've only reinforced it, so that quote's going to have to go to the top now, which is you can't invest from a position where there's insecurity, right? If you are in a secure position, now you can invest. But if you're investing, I'm saying, hey, I need to get ROI in 2 years, right? Or else, my partner's going to find out the college money went there. Thankfully, in the UK, we don't have to worry about college money. But I know in the US, that's a real
Yeah.
thing. And of course, we're not here to give financial advice to say that you shouldn't be taking such risks. However, for your mental, that will ruin you in the short term.
Yeah, and it'll also sap everything else that, like, but I want to make kind of a little bit of an indirect point. Like, I think one thing I like about Web3 is that it does allow you to invest non-monetarily.
Mm,
And I think, like, investments and being able to invest, and even like I think I fundamentally recognize the privilege we both come in, like, kind of talking about our ability to invest from a place of security and comfort. And one of the things I like about Web3, about like different DAOs, and is that you can actually also, like, it opens up more opportunities for people to invest without money. So you can put in
mm,
work at a DAO and then gain some investment by doing that, or you can, yeah. So there are different ways that you can participate without having to, like, and I think that's really cool, and I hope that it grows even more to allow, like, different types of investors to participate, and to build this world kind of that we want to see and we want to build.
That's so refreshing to hear because I'm actually exploring a new career as well. And some of the jobs I'm seeing within crypto are exactly that. You can either get paid out in a native token or you get equity. And I don't see that happening a lot in companies outside of Web3,
Mhm.
blockchain, technology companies, so on and so forth. So I'm so glad that you've delivered that message that, hey, look, if you don't have the capital, you have one resource that every other human does, and that's time, and you can exchange that time for the equity. So thank you for that reminder. Hey, with that being said, what's the one last thing you would love all the listeners to remember? If there was just one.
That's a lot of pressure. um Oh, actually, it's kind of also like a similar comment, but I think sometimes, like, we look at opportunities, and we're like, yes, no, maybe no because of this, but then sometimes there's the question of, like, what can I personally do to turn this
Mm,
no into a yes? And I think that's like a fun thing. At least for me, I find it quite fun. And obviously there isn't always going to be something you can do. Sometimes things are completely out of your hand, but I personally like that, like asking myself that question is like, is there something I can do to help this founder, for example, jump from a place where right now things aren't going to work, but I can give advice or connect this person to someone where it can be like transformative and push it from a no to a yes, or if I want to invest in something and I'm not sure like I'm able to do it, what can I do to move things around in order to be able to do it from a place of security? So it's kind of like going like one step further and kind of like, I guess, like problem solving, not
Mhm.
just like identifying the risks and identifying the problems, but thinking of like, how can I solve them or how can we solve them together? So I think that's, yeah, my final thought.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I know I'm definitely gonna be watching from afar to see how you problem solve. I'm the same. I love challenges, I love resistance, and I love waking up and be like, okay, oh, didn't see that coming. But hey, let's take this resistance and let's move past it. Because as we said, it's only a period of time and this will pass. So
Yeah.
thank you for spending time with me today. And with that being said, we're going to see you again on the show.
I hope so.
Good, good, good,
Um,
good. I love that. And now we've got a verbal commitment from you. There's no way you can back out. So, with that being said, hey, HBAR to the moon from our guest viewers. Thank you, everyone. And
Thank you.
with that being said, we'll see you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Well, everyone, I hope that was just as refreshing as it was for me. As you can see, my geeky philosophical side came. Philosophical, I don't think that's a word, but we're going to make it a word today. My geeky philosophical side came out during that interview today. And for me, anyway, I believe investing and philosophy and pretty much life in general, they're very in tune because the way you invest ultimately is how you really want to live your life. And one thing I found is when you start investing, you start to live life a little bit differently because you delay instant gratification for future gratification. Now, talking about the future, next week's guest arguably is the biggest name in the HBAR community. Doesn't work for Hedera, but he definitely keeps you updated with all that news. I'm not going to say live right now who that is. Keep an eye on my Twitter, Jordan with two N's, Harry with two Y's, to find out who that guest is. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I hope you feel 1% better after meeting Haya, and we'll see you next week. Ciao for now.